Grazie di andare veloce.
Laudetur Jesus Christus, praised be Jesus Christ. We are broadcasting to you from Paul VI Hall in the Vatican. We're taking place in where the first General Congregation of the 16th General Ordinary Assembly of the Synod of Bishops is taking place. This is the second part of it this evening. In the first part, we heard a statement from the President Delegate of the Assembly, from the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops, and from Cardinal Hollerich, the Relator General. And in this part, we'll have the presentation of the Instrumentum laboris, and we'll also be participating in a bit of prayer. What will be taking place in this session is we will once again hear from Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich, who is the Relator General.
Allora, iniziamo il primo modulo.
And so we begin the Module 1 to the Instrumentum laboris, the part of His Eminence Cardinal Hollerich, the Relator General.
Un'esperienza integrale. A lei.
Thank you, Your Beatitude. 2 speeches in a row from the same person seems a bit like a penance. Bear it with patience. I shall try to be brief, but I hope that an introduction to the first module of our work, which we are starting now, and which will keep us busy until Saturday morning, can be useful. This module is designed first and foremost to allow us to warm up our engines, to live and to experience the methodology that we will also use in the following modules. Above all, it will hopefully help us to learn how to make the alternation between circuli minoris and general congregations fruitful. I have spoken about this in my previous speech. I shall not repeat it. However, this first module also has another, far more important function. It must help us to make contact with synodality as a comprehensive vision, or rather, as the module title says, with the synodal church as an integral experience. This is a step of fundamental importance for our work. In fact, the questions we will be dealing with in the subsequent modules need to be placed within a horizon which constitutes the perspective of meaning and avoids the risk of getting lost in mere detail. I do not tell you which these points are. You know them. At the same time, the concreteness of the questions that we will address later on frees the overview from the risk of abstraction and generalization. Thus, between the first and subsequent modules, there is a dynamic relationship that is of vital importance for the fruitfulness of our discernment. This is why the Instrumentum Laboris reminds us that our commitment during the work of the Assembly is to sustain a dynamic equilibrium between maintaining an overview, which characterizes the work outlined in section A, and the identification of practical steps to be taken in a concrete and timely fashion, work which is the focus of section B. So on Saturday lunchtime, we will conclude module 1, but we will not simply send it to the archives. We will carry the formation and training it has given us into the next modules. To begin this training, I propose that we exercise the faculty of memory in its most profoundly spiritual sense. All of us here are members of the people of God, and as such, for the past 2 years, we have set out on the synodal path. This journey together has left traces in each of us: thoughts, emotions, feelings, intuitions, doubts, fears, enthusiasm. To undertake the work of the first module, each of us needs to reconnect with this heritage. I am well aware that for many reasons, not all of us have been involved in the synodal process in the same way. For some of us, I am thinking in particular of those who worked to organize the continental assemblies, took part in them, and contributed to the drafting of the final documents. The synodal process has been probably the most important commitment of the year. Others experienced it in a more distant manner, trusting the synodal teams they had appointed. The latter will probably have fewer rich personal memories, but they can also refer to what they have heard from those who have participated more actively, other bishops of the same bishops' conference, but above all, priests, deacons, women and men religious, lay women and men with whom they have been in contact over the past 2 years. The memory to connect with is the collective memory of the people of God, not just the personal memory of each individual. This is why the many documents produced during the synodal process can also help. The synthesis of one's own diocese, that of one's own bishop's conference, the working document for the continental stage, the final document of the assembly of one's own continent, and above all, section A of the Instrumentum Laboris. It is this enormous wealth that the worksheet you received in Sacrofano tries to summarize on the first page, which serves to introduce the question for discernment. I want to take it up here because during the work of the next few days, it is essential that we have in mind that our goal is to formulate an answer to this question, starting from the journey of the local churches to which we each belong, and from the contents of the Instrumentum Laboris. Which distinctive signs of a synodal church emerge with greater clarity and which deserve greater recognition or should be particularly highlighted or deepened? This question clearly shows us what to pay attention to when each one digs into his or her own memory of the synodal process, and especially when we share the fruits of this work tomorrow. Let us allow the points on which we feel there is a great clarity to emerge, but let us not overlook those where we feel there is still work to be done, where there is a mixture of light and shade, without fear of pointing out the reasons for uncertainty or doubt. Tomorrow we will spend the whole day working in the Circuli Minoris, applying the method of conversation in the Spirit. I would like to recall the succinct description of this method given in number 37 of the Instrumentum laboris. Conversation in the Spirit can be described as a shared prayer with a view to communal discernment, for which participants prepare themselves by personal reflection and meditation. They give each other the gift of a meditated word nourished by prayer, not an opinion improvised on the spot. For our work to be fruitful, for our communal discernment to proceed, tomorrow we must arrive prepared. In the morning, in the Circuli Minoris, we'll begin with a moment of mutual listening. Each person will have 4 minutes to communicate what is most important to her, to him. It will be possible to deliver the text of your speech, preferably in electronic format, to the Secretariat, so that it will enter into the assembly materials. 4 minutes is a short time, and I am sure each of us would have enough to share in order to fill a much longer slot. Therefore, each of us is invited to choose what seems most important and most meaningful, what they feel emerges most strongly from their memory. I invite everyone, if you have not already done so, to carve out some time for reflection and prayer this evening, or tomorrow morning for the early birds, so as to focus on what they want to communicate in their opening intervention in the group. The time each person invests in preparation will be a most important contribution to the quality of our common work. In view of this preparation work, let me suggest a gospel passage, the account of the disciples on the road to Emmaus. We are all familiar with this passage, but we need to meditate on it again. The 2 disciples walk in silence, their eyes downcast. Then when Jesus approaches, his presence and his questions open up a space for speaking and listening. They thus begin to tell that they exercise their memory, and it is a tale of hope and enthusiasm. But then disillusionment, frustration, anger, and fear also emerge. They are not afraid to entrust all this to the mysterious wayfarer. And so they discover that listening to his words dissolves their heaviness and transforms their desolation into a consolation that grows. Number 36 of the Instrumentum laboris, which refers to this very passage, commands, conversation in the Spirit builds communion and brings missionary dynamism. The 2, in fact, return to the community they had left to share the Easter proclamation that the Lord is risen. I do not know if we will have many moments of desolation in our walking together. But I am confident that by the work of the Holy Spirit, consolation will enter our hearts. And consolation is the condition for having a fruitful memory. It is the condition for undertaking a good discernment. I believe that returning to reflect even briefly on this passage from the Gospel of Luke can help us to enter into tomorrow's work with the right dispositions. So be happy. This concludes my introduction. After a few minutes of silence which is also there to make our memory grow, I now gladly leave the floor to Mother Ignazia Angelini. Tomorrow in the Circuli Minores, we'll have to walk together, sitting around our tables. We therefore ask Mother Angelini to nourish our spirit in view of that commitment. And as we know her, as we have heard her words, we know that she will do so, drawing on the profound experience of the great saint we are celebrating today. Finally, 2 testimonies will help us get in touch with the synodal memory of the people of God. Thank you for your attention.
Grazie, Eminenza.
Thank you, Your Eminence. We will now have a few minutes of silence in order to reflect and to think. Those of us who may be joining here can also enjoy a few minutes of silence as we see now the hall with the round tables and all of the participants who have come from all over the world. The table here we see at the front, headed by our Holy Father with Cardinal Mario Gregg, the General Secretary of the Secretariat for the Synod of Bishops, and then also the President Delegate of this particular phase of this first session of the 16th Ordinary General Assembly of Bishops, who is Ibrahim Sedrak. He's the Patriarch of Alexander of the Catholic Coptic Rite, and he's also the President of the Assembly of Patriarchs and Bishops in Egypt. There are several other President Delegates. It seems they may be taking turns leading the assembly. At the table also Cardinal Hullerich, who is the relator or rapporteur general, and Sister Natalie Beckart. As well as Bishop Luis Marin de San Martin, both of whom are under-secretaries. And now we will follow a spiritual meditation with Mother Maria Ignazia Angelini. This is not the first time the Assembly has heard from her. She provided meditations during the retreat that took place on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. She's the former abbess of a Benedictine monastery here in Italy.
Buonasera.
Good evening. We have enthroned the Gospel at the beginning of the opening of this synod, and it wasn't an empty ritual. From the Gospel, at first we proclaimed it in today's liturgy. From the Gospel flows every new beginning of the Church, the light and strength to live it. I was kind of catapulted here, outside of any planning. I just want to testify to something and maybe taking a risk, which today Jesus, through his Eucharist, convokes his church once again and says,
journey of bishops, where the Lord calls the church, come all to me. Everybody comes. Also bishops feel tired, maybe. Yes, Father. This cry of rejoice.
Yes, Father, the jubilant cry of Jesus at the heart of today's Gospel, at the heart of the Eucharist, is the grace that summons us here now as his church. It's a grace that precedes, it converts, and it regenerates every step, every thought and conversation, all the intense work that has led us here today. It opens the way and gives the step to proceed further over where the Spirit blows. Yes, Father, the Son's yes, that is from the beginning. He was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. A yes that marks his becoming into the world, preceded by the fiat, the yes of his mother, was spoken here at a precise moment in Matthew. It's a moment that Pope Francis talked about so well in the homily this morning. Yes, confirmed in prayer in the jubilation of the Spirit. A yes that in Jesus was provoked by the astonishing perception of the Father's choosing him. God does not allow himself to be hindered by the refusal of the powerful and the intelligent, but he reveals his mystery to the little ones. Let us welcome this yes of the Lord Jesus in awe and great joy at this beginning. In him there was and is only yes until the very end. Let it be according to your will. So today, in the yes of his Son, Jesus, God again reveals himself and acts in the church and history. Thus his Spirit moves tenacious, generative in the intricate paths of human communication, in the tangle of the events of history, in the affliction, the suffering of the poor, the least, in the restlessness of those who search, and in the openness of those who count for nothing, those who are the friends of God and prophets. Yes, Father, even today, Jesus, yes, gathers us and is the hidden force of that call which comes from above. Come to me, all of you. It's a mysterious intertwining of controversial sentiments that seems to animate Jesus, his yes, precisely at the moment in history. We know that from the Gospel narrative. Jesus had just voiced a heartful lament over the unbelieving obtuseness of the cities by the lake, but here he breaks free from all the resentful disappointment and blesses. And this is also what we need to find in our conversations, a new righteousness that he proclaimed at the Jordan River, and which we find again in the Passion. Yes, Father, with his most meek authority, he teaches us the art of blessing, which could be the chord that goes throughout this assembly, blessing at all times. Jesus, in a context that surrounds him, it like squeezes him in. It despises and rejects the proclamation of the gospel or the kingdom. And thus Jesus exercises. There's also the doubt of the forerunner and the rejection of the cities of the lake in his own land. The Son's great authoritative and most gentle revelation summons us, but it also reverberates on our paths. It opens our paths up. And this will take place in the conversations in the Spirit, to whom the little ones will receive the revelation. The little ones, this is the dynamic force of synodality, to be rediscovered by us, in us, a generation that's stressed and dispersed in many conversations that are sometimes really exhausting. St. Francis is still for us today a luminous, eloquent witness of littleness, of the blessed minority generated by the Son's summons, come. Yes, Father, from Jesus to Francis, from one awe to another, down to us. Will we know how to welcome Jesus and allow ourselves to be summoned by his yes? Impatient with a quarrelsome society, young Francis, the jester of God, and very courageous in his passion for Our Lady Poverty, confused with heretics and persecuted, he pursued Jesus' footsteps in perfect joy. The difference from heretics and divisive protesters is in him limpid, it's disarming, it's that humble love that we find surprising. It's very simple. He who had understood God's call to become like a madman. But what madness was he talking about? Enlightened by a dream, he was invited to create a new ecclesial reality. Francis likened himself to a mother hen in caring for his brothers. A tiny little black hen, too small to keep under his own wings, and therefore vitally attached to the large church. And even in the hour when he experienced disfigurement from his ideals, and he had to dispossess himself of his own project, he remained faithful to his dream, to that meek and humble one who had called him in the name of "Here lies perfect joy." And in the hour in which Francis was naked and blind, almost erased from history, Francis intones the greatest praise to God. And so Francis today opens
paving the way for this consent. In his seventh admonition, Francis recalled the word of the apostle, the letter kills, the spirit gives life. They died because of the letter. Those who want to know just words, because so they are considered more knowledgeable among others, and they can buy richness for friends and family. They died because of the letter. Those religious who do not want to follow the spirit of divine scripture, but they long for knowing words alone and to explain words to others. They are vivified by the spirit of divine scripture. Those who know and would like to know are vivified by the scripture. Those who do not consider themselves, who are not self-centered, but give back the word to the Lord. Giving back the word, becoming a living echo of the word, a silent echo of the word.
Ecco, potremo ipotizzare l'anima della conversazione spirituale.
And this is how we consider the spiritual conversation. The spirit of this minority revealed by Jesus and embodied or enfleshed by
da Teresa di Lisieux, che in questi giorni ricordiamo nel 150esimo
Saint Teresa of the in the anniversary of her birth. As Father Lafont commented, this smallness is not infantilism. It's the still fresh and tender root of our deepest being. Everyone has it within themselves. We need to rediscover it. It's a kind of unconditional availability of where we can arrive, which allows us to welcome without calculation what happens, to take in everything willingly, blessing, and so then we are set on the path of wisdom, of the vision of God and human challenges of what Jesus, who knows the Father, wants to reveal to us. And so the result is a respectful closeness to all human beings, beginning with those who are closest, which goes all the way to meekness. That is, making room for the other, creating space for him or her to come unto him or herself. Yes, Father, ad sumus, as we prayed at the beginning. Doesn't this prayer repropose that posture that we find in the Gospel in Francis? It's about consenting, not through gritted teeth because there's no other alternative, but rather blessing and giving thanks to a God who is radically other in the manner of his saving action, revealing a good that pleases, that he is pleased. So we're here, we're called to listen through and beyond the conversation among us, to hear the beloved Son who summons us to a pause, a repose, a rest, as only he knows how to give, to the rest or repose of a meek and humble acceptance of reality. May these days be fruitful, open to the grace of that call, come to me all of you, that you might find perfect joy of the little ones who receive revelation. The fullness of joy of Jesus, as Luke emphasizes, he exalts in the Spirit, is entrusted to the hands and hearts of those who are weary and burdened, those who seek repose, rest, and relief in the meekness and humility of Jesus, bearing his meek yoke and his light burden. But only those who make room for the spirit of blessing and thanksgiving it is granted only to them to recognize God's action in history and to understand the language of others, to see God at work in the world. For God reveals his secrets to the humble, makes his will known to them. Once more, we'll have a few moments of silence to pray in our hearts. those participating in this first session of the Synod on Synodality engaged in a moment of silence after having heard a meditation provided by Sister Maria Ignazia. And then we should be hearing from a bishop who has been chosen to speak, giving a witness about the synodal journey. And we'll also be hearing from a lay person. As we heard earlier, this is the first time that lay people, along with women religious, are taking part as full members in the assembly. And we'll continue the presentation of the Instrumentum laboris with two testimonies. The first by His Excellency Bishop Risch, Archbishop. I didn't get the name, but I believe he's from Poland.
Most Holy Father, dear sisters and brothers, I've been asked to say these few words only yesterday, so I had no much time to preparation. But from the other side, I am not expected to give a conference or lecture, but only to share and to give testimony to the event of synodality in my diocese. So I will dare to share what is really deep in my experience and in my heart. I will choose only what was really important for me, hoping it will be helpful also for you. First, a bit of context. I am a bishop of Łódź in Poland, the diocese with 1,300,000 Catholics and 219 parishes. Synod of Synodality gathered circa 7,000 people in 300 synodal groups. One can say 7,000 people is a quite big number. But from the other side, it is just a drop in a sea of 1,300,000 people. But at the end, what really matters is not the numbers. What matters is that all those 7,000 people really met. During Synod, we decided not to publish any questionnaires. We wanted people to meet each other. It was not easy because of the COVID, so the last groups we organized online. And in all the groups became a place and experience of unity in a rich diversity. One could see, for instance, the believers of extraordinary form of Latin Rite and leaders of charismatic communities together. Invited to speak, many people used to start like that. It is the first time in my life I have a chance to speak in the church, and I feel I am listened to. But on the other side, I think it is the last time I decided to say something in the church. I decided once more to take the step of trust, but to say the truth, I do not expect too much. Listening to such voices, you cannot escape a huge responsibility. To summarize this first part, I want to say that it is due to synodal process we discovered the new important feature of the Church. Usually, to describe the condition of the diocese, we start with the percentage of so-called dominicantes and communicantes. Now it becomes more and more important to know the number of responsabiles, the number of people who not only come to the Church, but who build the Church, being invited and encouraged to do so. Now I want to tell about two concrete synodal events which are carried deeply in my memory. First, concerning synodality and hierarchical dimension of the Church. In Poland and probably everywhere, you will easily find many people being afraid of synodality, that synodality will destroy the hierarchical constitution of the Church, replacing it with the democratic equality or parliamentary debate or consensus. Those who promote synodality are described as the people simply opposing the hierarchy and its leading role in the Church. So I want to quote a layperson who stood up on the synodal meeting and said, "We are not afraid of hierarchy. We are not afraid at all. We are afraid of it only if the clergy leave aside the permanent formation. When they do not listen to the word of God, do not confess, do not really belong to any concrete community, when they escape any retreats, yes, in such an only case, we are really afraid of them and their power in the Church." The second moment shows the strong connection between synodality and evangelization. Without, I would say, the broad synodality, we have no chance to bring the gospel to the people of today, especially if you want to reach with the gospel those who do not come to your churches, in which this is 80% of population. There was a moment during the synod we talked about family life. And the first sound of alarm came to me when someone in the synodal aula started to speak about Trinitarian inner life of God as the most important pattern of true family life. Yes, I started to think, but who is really able to understand such an idea? Who will be attracted and invited by such a proclamation? Fortunately, we had in the synod some families of so-called irregular status. Some with the members who do not believe at all or do not practice regularly. One of them, who usually does not attend the Mass, and as he said when he came for the first time, hasn't gone to the sacrament of penance last 20 years, took the voice as the last person during the session and said, "I'm sitting here with you the whole day. You stress all the time that it is the people like me you want to address. So I have to tell you that I didn't understand a single word out of everything you have said today." And this is how the blessing comes. This is the Holy Spirit who operates. You see, it is not enough to call for synod even hundreds of lay people who are already involved in the Church and to discuss the things with them. the gap between them and the people who are baptized like them, but live in the world is incredible. Without broad synodality, we have not only instruments, but even the language to evangelize. And the last thing I want to share with you is so far, the broadest fruit of the Synod. On 16th of September, we have opened so-called parochial synods in all the parishes of the diocese. They will last 2 years. In each parish, synod is run by the parochial pastoral council. First, the council discerns, prepares questions, problems, challenges important for this very local community. And then the parish priest convokes all the parishioners for meeting with spiritual conversation. Of course, I have any idea about the result in 2 years' time. But as for now, I can say that at least I have finally the pastoral council in every single parish. Only in the last 2 months, the councils were created in 85 or 90 parishes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Grazie, Eminenza. La seconda testimonianza.
Thank you, Your Eminence. The second testimony about the synodal journey
Thomas Matthew,
from Mr. Thomas Matthew from the United Arab Emirates.
Your Holiness, I am Matthew Thomas, representing the migrant church in the Arabian Gulf. I am happy to share the beautiful and fruitful synodal experience we had in our vicariates. The apostolic vicariates of Southern Arabia and Northern Arabia spread across the 7 countries of the Arabian Gulf. Our synodal journey began with the inaugural Mass and the formation of the Synod coordination team at the vicariate level and at the parish level. The first task was to spread the message of the Synod. It was communicated to all the faithful through the pastoral letter and video message of Bishop sent to all the parishes. It was also communicated to all the registered members through email and other social media posts. Posters were put up in the church compound. Synod prayer cards were printed and distributed, and the faithful were encouraged to recite the prayer as part of their family prayer. The Synod prayers were very much part of the daily Holy Masses. Since our faithful are made up of over 100 nationalities, the questions for reflection were translated into different languages. Seminars and training to create awareness about and to highlight the process of the Synod were organized in the parishes. We had 35 such training sessions for the leaders from various communities and prayer groups. It was a challenge to coordinate these activities during COVID times. But with the tremendous support from the church leadership and committed volunteers, we could reach out to the maximum number of people. As a result, we could have 150,000 people directly participating in the Synod, sharing their dreams, hopes, frustrations, and suggestions. All the communities, various youth groups, ministries, and sodalities actively participated in the Synod. Special mention must be made of the participation of the tiny Catholic community still practicing their faith in the war-torn country of Yemen, which is part of our vicariate. Perhaps one of the most powerful responses came from the children and teenagers. We have around 50,000 children and teenagers attending our catechism program in the two vicariates. And out of this, around 20,000 from grade 6 and above participated in the Synod. 2 catechism classes were exclusively kept for the Synod, and 2 separate synods were held for the teenagers. Responses from the teenagers were enthusiastic. The teenagers are more aware about the happenings in the church, and many of them shared their dreams to see a new face of the church, more loved and respected in the world. Special efforts were made to reach out to the voiceless. A major part of the migrants in the Gulf region are construction workers living in labor camps, working 10 to 12 hours a day for 6 days a week. The outreach ministry of the Jesus Youth Movement was entrusted with the task of reaching out to the people in the labor camps, the fisher folk and the people who had left the Catholic faith. Hundreds of youth volunteers went around the camps to meet our people. As it was not allowed to gather the people together in the camps, the volunteers met them one by one, and the people were happy that the church took the initiative to listen to them. The Samaritan ministry, the charity wing of the church, was given the task to reach out to the housemaids and some of the people who were released from the jail. And we were able to meet around 80 of them and get their feedback. The listening process of the Synod was also a healing process for many. I would like to share a beautiful experience that we had while visiting the fisher folk community in one of the Emirates. The youth volunteers visited them, but they were not getting any cooperation from them in the beginning because they had been away from all the church activities for almost 3 years due to some bad experience they had earlier related to the transportation arrangements we make to bring them to the church. But these young volunteers visited the community again and again, and finally they sat together and shared their feelings and opinions, and as a result, now they are back in the church. We have gone through all the stages of the Synod. Besides the initial parish-level Synod meetings, we were also able to reflect on and to get feedback from parishes based on the documents provided for the Continental Synod, and finally, based on Instrumentum laboris. We have also taken steps to make corrections and improvements based on the suggestions given by the faithful during the parish synod. Holy Father, I would like to conclude by saying that the people are genuinely happy to have been part of this synodal process, and for the opportunity they got to open their hearts freely and fearlessly. I feel we are beginning to see a new phase of the Church. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you.
E abbiamo ancora per ultimo 2 minuti di silenzio.
And for the last time, we'll take 2 minutes of silence in order to reflect before listening to some words of advice from the Secretary General. We've just heard 2 testimonies, one from a bishop in Poland who spoke about the synodal process from his perspective as a bishop, a process by which at the end they were able to begin pastoral councils in, if I remember correctly, 80 some odd parishes. And then a layman, Matthew Thomas, from the United Arab Emirates, speaking about the process, the synodal process that took place in the Arab region there. Once again, we're seeing live the second part of the First General Congregation. And now we should be hearing from His Eminence Mario Grech. The Holy Father approved the regolamento, the regulations, and you'll find a copy in Italian and English. It's true as the saying goes. Let's hope that the regulations can be an instrument that can truly help us to live this experience. Then, the Holy Father, looking at Article 18 on the celebration of the Synodal Assembly, constituted a group for controversies, and he's naming the cardinals.
Sua Eccellenza Monsignor Felix Gen e Sua Eccellenza Monsignor Filippo Iannone. Questa è la commissione per le controversie.
There's a commission for controversies that has been provided, and he's also mentioning the new exhortation, Laudate Deum, and he's given us a gift. There's a copy for all of us. Thank you.
Se per motivi veramente seri, no?
If for serious reasons someone needs to be absent from the assembly, please communicate this in writing.
Sua Eccellenza Monsignor Luis Marin, Sottosegretario.
And he's there to go to the Undersecretary of the Secretariat. We need this information in order to possibly recreate the working groups. Tomorrow, we will begin, as has already been communicated, the working groups. In every group there will be facilitators, a facilitator, and a secretary, indicated by the Secretariat. For the secretaries, please, when we conclude today's assembly, we'll meet here for the secretaries of the groups. In the working groups, the members. There will also be the fraternal delegates, and also the special invitees. About the fraternal delegates and the special invitees have the right to speak and not the right to vote, but they do have the right to speak. Tomorrow morning, every morning, Mass will be in St. Peter's Basilica at 7:30. Perhaps it's good that we get there at 7. The cardinals and bishops will prepare, and he's mentioning where they will, the priests and bishops will vest. Two other things. We have a booklet for the liturgy. This is better to leave at the table, so that tomorrow morning we'll find it for the prayer. It's important that each one exclusively uses his or her own tablet and not exchange it with others, not sharing, and not to take it out of the hall because it won't work. But if we don't respect this rule, then it might create a bit of confusion. It's also not possible to change places that have been assigned, not even with the person next to you at table. Always for the reason of organization. So these are the announcements. Help from the Lord. And we'll conclude with a prayer to Our Lady. The members now are getting to their feet. As we heard, one of the new things that is in the regolamento for this, or the regulations, guidelines, is a commission for disputes. That's the word that's actually been used in the English translation. It's composed of 3 members that were announced, who were appointed by the Pope. And that way any disputes that come up can be presented and examined by the 3.
Sancta Dei Genitrix, nostras deprecationes, ne despicias in necessitatibus, sed a periculis cunctis, libera nos semper, Virgo gloriosa et benedicta.
And it looks like things are concluding now, so we'll begin to wrap up this broadcast of the presentation of the Instrumentum laboris at the first session of the 16th Ordinary General Assembly. We will be providing many more live broadcasts that take place during the Synod, so we invite you to continue checking back to the Vatican News web portal, where you'll be able to find what the next broadcast might be.
Faccio i nomi dei segretari dei gruppi di lavoro: Spengler, Battaglia, Crisan.
There's another announcement. So this is about the people who will be meeting now. Each morning, the morning prayer or the celebration of Holy Mass, if that is a solemn celebration, will be broadcast live. The next General Congregation that will be broadcast live is on Monday, the 9th of October, and that begins at 10 o'clock a.m. local Rome time. So we also invite you to visit the Vatican News web portal, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube accounts for complete coverage that we'll be providing for the 16th General Ordinary Assembly of the Synod of Bishops. And we also will be back again live on Sunday when the Holy Father will lead the Angelus as usual for those gathered in St. Peter's Square. On behalf of Vatican Media, I'd like to thank our in-studio audio technician Adriano Vitali and all of our media partners, EWTN, Salt and Light Media, Shalom TV India, and Sunday Shalom at Madarshan TV, Shalom World Television Networks, Catholic TV, and Uganda Catholic Television. Let's continue praying for our brothers and sisters who are participating in this Ordinary General Assembly of Bishops, which will take place here in this hall all the way till the 29th of October. Laudetur Jesus Christus, praised be Jesus Christ.